Welcome back, everyone. Spring and summer is a time for new growth and taking bold action together. So we hope these stories will inspire you to live boldly, take wise chances, and with our friends and family make a difference together. Today we're going to be reading The American Story, 100 True Tales from American History by Jennifer Armstrong and illustrated by Roger Roth. So lean in with the spirit of adventure, grab a friend, and let's enjoy the story together. 1945, Raising the Flag on Iwo Jima. World War II in the Pacific was a dangerous game of leapfrog from island to island. Battleships and submarines cruised the vast ocean. Fighter planes and long-range bombers flew from island airstrip to aircraft carriers with nothing but water in between. The only sure way for America to win the war was to keep the enemy from learning invasion plans and troop strength and the location of essential supplies. But how was that possible? The Japanese cracked every code the U.S. Marines tried, and too many Japanese spoke fluent English to make talking by radio possible. Without a good code, the Marines couldn't keep anything secret. They were taking heavy losses on each island they tried to capture. The Marines needed a secret language, a language so difficult, so unknown, that the Japanese wouldn't even be able to write down the sounds they heard, let alone understand them. The Marines needed the Navajo. In 1942, the First Corps of Navajo Marines began training in California, and actually Philip Johnson, son of a missionary to the Navajos, who spoke the language fluently, knew that Navajo was the answer because it was such a difficult language. So it's interesting, Philip Johnson. Their native language was spoken only by other Navajo and, clearly some other people, but very few, and had never been written down. But the Navajo code talk wasn't just plain Navajo. It was secret form of the language. Common military terms were given names of familiar Southwest objects. And I'm not going to try this. I tried to look it up. Anyway, there's some examples of what each word means. Let's see. To spell out words, the code talkers used Navajo words whose English meaning started with the right letters. Code talkers could communicate by radio without fear that the enemy could intercept and understand the message. Not even other Navajos could understand it if they hadn't learned the code. 450 code talkers were assigned to the Pacific, at least 2 to each unit. When the Marines landed on an island, one Navajo went forward with an intelligence team, penetrating enemy lines and sending back vital information to another code talker on board ship. Island after island, it was a bloody struggle for control. Oh, hi, honey. My goodness. Island after island was a bloody struggle for control, but the Marines were advancing across the Pacific thanks to their unbreakable code. And yet, with all the islands the U.S. military controlled, there was one that was the key to all the rest, Iwo Jima. This island, only 5 miles long and 3 miles wide, was a mere 750 miles from Japan. On it was an airstrip that was a critical refueling stop for planes going across the Pacific. If the United States could capture Iwo Jima, Japan would be within reach, but the island was heavily defended by 22,000 Japanese troops who had dug themselves into underground bunkers. The enemy knew the U.S. would go for Iwo Jima, but because of their secret communications, they did not know when. The Marines were able to assemble a huge invasion force without detection. On December 8, 1944, they began a bombing campaign that lasted for 2 months. From the middle of the island rose Mount Suribachi, an extinct volcano, and as the bombs rained down onto the island, it was as though the mountain woke in fury. On February 14, 1945, the invasion began. As Marines poured into the island, the entrenched Japanese began shelling and firing. Navajo code talkers radioed messages back to command where the enemy was, what positions the Marines held. In the first 2 days of battle alone, 6 code talkers sent and received over 800 messages, none of which the Japanese could decipher, and which allowed the Marines to make slow but steady headway. The battle for Iwo Jima lasted for a month. It took 4 days just to capture Mount Suribachi, when at last a group of weary Marines raised the American flag on top of the mountain to show that the island was taken. The news crackled over the radio at Marine Command. Ice Weasel, Oil Jaw, Itch Mouse, Axe. Iwo Jima has fallen. You guys. Shh. News crackled over the radio at Marine Control. Ice Weasel, Oil Jaw, Itch Mouse, Axe. Iwo Jima has fallen. It was a turning point of the war. Within months it would all be over. And I looked it up, yes, Gene. And August 14th is Navajo Code Talkers Day. And there's a note here from them. It says the Navajo Code was so successful that the military kept it as a classified secret until 1968. It wasn't until then that anyone knew the vital role the Navajos had played in winning the war. A photograph of the flag being raised on Mount Suribachi went on to win, a Pulitzer Prize for news photography. It became one of the most famous patriotic images of World War II and was later transformed into a memorial sculpture at Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. And it's really interesting, too, because, you know, that image of them raising the flag, you know, the Patriots during the Revolutionary War, right before it anyway, met under large liberty trees and poles and here's the picture. Thank you. You see it? This was another powerful image that that a lot of people saw. And but yeah, it's interesting that during the Revolutionary War that people met under large liberty trees, that there were poles. Well, one was an actual tree, but typically it was a pole that they erected, and they had a red flag or red cap that was on the top. That was this sign that they were calling a meeting. But this liberty pole goes back to pre-Roman times, actually. And it meant that a slave was freed and given a cap called a liberty cap. And that's why they used the cap. Later in Roman army battle, conquering general raised a liberty cap on a pole. And so our guys used it during the Revolutionary War. But it's just interesting thinking of that image of raising the liberty pole and raising this flag. I was just thinking about that when I was reading the story of how similar the image would have been. I mean, obviously one's a flag, one's a pole, but both representing the desire for freedom, the desire to take what you think you need to in order to be free. And the men that were in the picture, there was some confusion because there was actually two flag raisings. One they did and realized that the flag was too small, and then the second one they did, and that's what the picture that was taken, and that's the image. So the men who did that were Corporal Harlan Block, PFC Harold Keller, PFC Ira Hayes, PFC Harold Schultz, PFC Franklin Slowsley, Sergeant Michael Strank were the ones who actually raised the flag in the picture. So yeah, amazing image.